Hey, today I have a tutorial for you how to run a Horde army. And this is not something that I myself typically do. I'm not a Horde player, as you know from looking at many of my, I guess, my army lists. But I have played against quite a few Horde armies, and I know quite a few people who run them. Um, very well and very competitively. So I know something of what it is that they do. Um, Also, I have members on my own Danish team that does so, and so yeah, I know something, and I'll tell you all about it. So here we go. This is my tutorial for how to run Horde armies, specifically in V3. The disclaimers are I am no expert. I have played against the very best at this. Um, the closest I've come to running Horde armies is when I, in version 2, ran my partisans, where I would run very large groups of what I call pistoleros. So they were inexperienced pistol armed men. And in V2, they had tough fighter because the pistol gave you tough fighter. So I used them as hordes of assault infantry, basically. Um, so that was a Horde army build I had. In most of my armies, I had 40 plus of these partisan pistolmen. Um, so I did run some Horde like stuff for a while, but I'm not. I haven't played Japanese, right? I'm not a true Horde player. The Japanese, the Soviets, maybe the French are the armies that we've typically seen do Horde style play. Now, there are three ways to build a horde. You can go the route of paying as little per body as possible, the inexperienced route. For that, you need 12 man plus units, so they need to be quite big, because especially in V3, your units are not going to survive. So you need quite a lot of men in order for them to just shrug off the casualties they'll take, right? Preferably, I think you'd want to be close to 15 in your build here, and that means that it's not all armies that can do this. Rifles are not actually that needed for this build because all of these guys can all fight in close combat, so they're still very, very dangerous, and they're mostly there not to shoot, but to be a threat, to be something that is dangerous and needs shooting at, and that will just remove 1-2 casualties each turn until you're on the objectives and you win. You need about 120-ish bodies. That's what I'm seeing most really competitive players bring if they're going to go hordes. And you also need to be aware that you need some kind. I'll get to this. You need some kind of way of making these guys move. Otherwise, you'll just get stuck by pins. So it's not all armies that can do this. If you're going to go regulars, I would not recommend it. I've seen it attempted many times. I have yet to see it successfully run. You need 10-man units, at least 10 men. And you need the rifles because now you are moving and you are shooting. So this becomes a lot more expensive, and this will get you approximately 80 bodies of regulars. But I will say that since regulars are very, very vulnerable, you are going to also here lose quite a lot of regulars in on your way up the board, and you have to go up the board. However, 10-man units are available to a lot more armies, which is nice. And for some of the armies, 10 men is actually a full strength unit, which means that you can use these as quite good outflankers. Veterans, if you're going to go horde of veterans, that's a little bit of a different build, but you can do it. And then you can get away with 8 to 10 man units. You still need a fair amount of veterans in order to not just lose them quite early on. You need rifles. Preferably, actually, you need a couple of SMGs in each unit because these guys are going to go up and they are going to try and kill stuff. so you need some shooting that's dangerous at close range, and you'll typically have around 40 to 60 men in such units, in such builds here. I recently, a friend of mine posted a Soviet army list that had 39 veterans in it, and 59 veterans, and 41 of them had body armor or something like that. It was insane. So that's what you can do, and you need to get into that range band in order to have enough veteran bodies. Now, again, this means that your dice count will go down, which also means that you are very likely to get pinned. It is the scourge of all Horde armies in V3. They will get pinned, they will get shot. So you need support. And here you spend like the final 200-ish points of your army build. You need 3 types of support. You need command in order to keep the units moving so they don't get pinned down. Preferably, I think a company commander is a good idea. He needs to be survivable, so he needs to sit in an armored car, transport of some sort, or he needs to be of a decent size with extra dudes, veterans and stuff. Political officers can also get you going if you have those in your nation, and so can some types of military police. The German Feldgendarmen and Feldjägers can do some of this same thing. You also need something to take care of tanks, otherwise your horde of inexperienced dudes is just going to get run over by tanks, and they will fail their morale tests, run off and die. So you need something to threaten away tanks. You need Fausts, or you need like inexperienced cheap dog mines. The recent Soviet book has sort of killed those off, but you can still get them, and they are still a little bit of a threat, especially if you don't have any tanks of your own, right? So the enemy still has to deal with that idea of you coming at him. And it might actually be worth looking at getting anti-tank grenades, especially if you have very large units. Because a 12-man unit, all of them hitting your tank on a 4+, that's 6 hits. And that's +6 to penetrate, will penetrate most tanks. So actually, yeah, I know it's not the most efficient way, and you're going to lose guys going in the charge, but it is a way of really making tanks stay at range of you. They don't want to get too close if you have anti-tank grenades. Final thing you need is you need some HE support. You need some shooting for the things that your veterans or horde of inexperienced dudes or a bunch of regulars, 100 regulars, that they really can't get to. You need some HE. You need some HE support in the form of mortars or howitzers, maybe even tanks. Something that can shoot when your horde of bodies really can't. They're going to sit there, they're going to try to survive most of the time by going down, by being in cover, by being a lot of them, right? But they're not going to be massively deadly unless you get into close combat, which is where horde armies can be massively deadly, even in V3. But to get there, you need support. You need those extra things. And some of them, especially tanks, can actually benefit your infantry because you can get cover from sitting behind your own armor, which is great. So those are the things that you look for and think about when you're building an army like this. And the pictures you're looking at, by the way, are from World Open War. One of the first ones I showed you was Christoph's army, his horde Japanese. He played against me in one game, and we drew narrowly. I was very happy that I drew that game because I was set to lose it. Because I could not. I was shooting him. I could not kill enough, and he had massive amounts of indirect fire support for his inexperienced horde, which is how you build that. So that's part of how I sort of got to this point. He had all of these things. He had command support, he had a company commander, he had AT grenades on a couple of units, and he had massive amounts of mortars, even including the spigot mortar, which is not yet out in V3. So what formations can you do? Well, there are two things that I see Horde players do. One of them is the layer cake. So you have a layered defense where your units are one behind the other, just like I'm showing on the screen here beside my head. Units one behind the other in layers down towards your own back line, where your support units are going to sit. Your company commander going to sit in the middle, hopefully with enough range to keep the units pushing forward. Your artillery pieces, your mortar pieces, all of that sit there with a little bit of platoon commanders bonus, giving them that fire. And typically what I see people do when they're playing like this is they have those waves of units. They'll actually give cover to the ones behind them. So they're always in cover, more or less. If you shoot at the first unit, they'll go down, try to survive, but then the next unit will be able to move up, or the next one behind that, because you can always run through your own units. So that is brilliant. They'll typically, once they start their turn, they'll have their indirect fire, their battery, their artillery go first. And then any units that get shot at, they'll go down, giving cover down the line until they start running through each other. Now, this is still very costly in the lives of your toy soldiers. It's World War One stuff, right? You're basically pushing a lot of dudes through a very narrow corridor straight at the enemy's guns, hoping that the first line will take the most of the casualties, so the second or third line will connect. I've seen this done very successfully by some top players. Manuel did it at the WTC in Poland a lot of years back in V2. He did it very successfully. He played against Michael Fier, my teammate Michael Fier, who had a tank army of Germans at that point, and Michael Fier could simply not kill Manuel. His battery fire, however, did kill Michael. So so very successfully run at that tournament, and I've seen it done other times as well by Manuel and by other Horde players. The next one, the second formation that I'm seeing, I was actually also the first time I saw it was also Manuel, but the last time I've seen it was Christoph at World Open War 25, and it's the starfish or the octopus. So what happens is you have a central anchor piece. It could be a company commander, for instance, a central anchor piece, and from that the units will sort of snake out in long, thin lines with 1 inch, exactly 1 inch, between each of the models in the units. And because there are 10 to 15 guys in each unit, the reach actually gets quite enormous. That's 29 inches per 15-man unit. This means that command is a lot easier because all the units are most of the time in range of your commander. Even though they're like halfway across the board, the back dude is still in range of your commander, and you can give that +4 order test, right? Which is great for keeping them going. It does also mean that you're a little less likely to have the cover save from your own units, but since you're snaking the units around terrain, you're much more likely to be able to exploit terrain for your own benefit and get hard, soft cover for all your units. Patience here, I think, is the key. You need to set this up right. And you need to be experienced in order to know where you can go, where you can push the units, and what they can take. And you need to be able to take casualties, because the guys at the front, the guys who are closest to the enemy, they are going to be shot at, and they are going to lose men. A lot of men. So what natural enemies does the Horde army have? Well, they used to have 5 big natural enemies. 2 of them have now more or less gone from the meta of bold action completely. So the darker tanks, the darker stewards, the darker Panzer IIIs, that dominated in V2 was the natural enemy because it shot so many of these infantrymen, right? Now the Darker tanks are mostly gone, especially since the machine guns on tanks now fire half as many shots as the machine guns on foot does. So even though you may have like an MGMC with 4 heavy machine guns, and that is a lot of shots, in V2 it was twice as many, right? And right now that unit will not actually delete 15-man units anymore. It could in version 2, but it doesn't do that anymore. Also, the assault specialists have more or less gone from the game, since assault is now so difficult to pull off successfully as a strategy for your army builds. So most people, myself included, that were assault players have stopped assaulting because it's now no longer possible. It's not a thing that you do. And the assault specialists, the Gurkhas, the Polish Lancers, they were the natural enemy of all hordes. You will not believe how many Japanese armies I have fought in team tournaments, because it was my speciality with my Gurkhas. I would cut them down in droves, right? I would simply cut my way through all of those armies, because they were assaulters too, but they were not as good as me. Simply put, right? So, and with the removal of the assault specialist, I think there is an opening for the hordes. However, massed range shooting has gotten better in V3. Which means that we have to be able to deal with mass range shooting. We also have to be able to deal with SMG armed veterans, which now, when they get up close, right, you don't get the benefit of going down anymore. So you will lose a lot more men when you're in that range of SMG armed, especially veterans on objectives where they don't want to go, right? And you can't really charge them off anymore. So that is a problem for the Horde players, which may mean that we'll see Horde players lean more into rifles or something else to dig out those veterans. At least they need something to dig them out of the objectives. We could also see tank assaults be a thing, and that is something that you can mitigate with just having that company commander for the +4. When the tank assaults, you get a +4 morale bonus save, right? You're failing on 12, only on 12. Or you can just, have special rules that benefit you. Stubborn, fanatic, whatever. Those will also mean that tank assaults are less beneficial to the enemy and less threatening to you. So thank you so much, World Open War, for the images that I used here in this tutorial, and thank you all for tuning in. It's been fun as always. Now, I myself am going to go and start training and building armies for Bolt Action Double Dutch, which I'm going to really soon. It will be great. Hopefully I can do better than I did at World Open War, which was a bad tournament for me. But we shall see. Yeah, that's it from me today. See you next time. Cheers.